Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon, sir.
We now reconvene the 12th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on National Security. I wish to welcome everyone, including the general public and our listening audience. I would want to welcome first the members of this committee who are present with us in no order of importance because we are all equally important. I wish to welcome Member of Parliament, Dr. Rudal Munilal, Senator Paul Richards, Member of Parliament Kennedy Richards, and Senator Nigel De Freitas, who are the present members or the members that are present who form this committee. With respect to our support staff, who they are invaluable, I wish to welcome Mr. Brian Caesar, our secretary, Ms. Renee Batson, our assistant secretary, Ms. Krista Gittins, our graduate research assistant, and Ms. Sophia Shah, our graduate research assistant. I wish to welcome also the members or the persons who are attending this inquiry from the Professional Standards Bureau, who will be the first entity that will be questioned. I wish to welcome Ms. Suzette Martin, Acting Senior Superintendent, Mr. Ricardo Montes, Acting Superintendent, Mr. Amir Mohammed, Sergeant of Police, and they are from the Professional Standards Bureau, and they're here to represent the Professional Standards Bureau. With respect to the Office of the Commissioner of Police, I wish to welcome Mr. MacDonald Jacob, Acting Commissioner of Police, but he's not yet in the meeting. And we'll also have Mr. Wendell Williams, Deputy Commissioner of Police, and Mr. Kerwin Francis, but they are not yet in the meeting. For the purposes of the here and now, we have the three members of the Professional Standards Bureau of the Police Service, and the title of this inquiry, or the reason for this inquiry, is to inquire into the safety and security of the citizens and address public concerns about the performance of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. In this regard, we say that, as a brief background, the purpose of this meeting is to commence discussions with the stakeholders in relation to the inquiry and to understand the current state of affairs with respect to the performance of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and the ways in which the service can be strengthened and improved, and thereby, ultimately, we'd want to increase public confidence in the police service. The objectives of this inquiry include, but are not limited to assess the public perception of safety and security, to determine the public's primary concerns about the performance of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, to gain an appreciation for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service's strategy to combat the increase in instances of criminal offenses, and particularly we wish to focus on women and minors, and to determine the progress and challenges associated with improving the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service performance, oversight, and governance and structure. You would agree that this is indeed a very lofty endeavor, but it's a very necessary endeavor in order for us to grasp and grapple with trying to improve the police service, and so that they and the members of the police service can augment their performance and that citizens can feel safer in Trinidad and Tobago. There are some guidelines that I would like to outline for this public hearing. Please ensure that all forms of communication are either turned off or on silent. I would insist on microphone etiquette. When one person is speaking, then their mic is on. Others, please mute your mic, and that avoids unnecessary noises when the mics are unmuted. There's a raise your hand feature, which I may not be able to recognize, but I'm sure the very efficient staff will recognize, and we will adhere to that if a hand is raised. But we do have a lineup relative to how we intend to proceed with the questioning. And in those circumstances, I move right into the next portion, which will be, I will be inviting members of the committee firstly to introduce themselves to the public. We can do it starting with the Vice Chair.
Good afternoon all. Thanks for being here. Paul Richards, Vice Chair of the committee.
Good afternoon, Dr. Rudol Munilal, member.
Good afternoon, Kennedy Richards, member.
Good afternoon, Nigel De Freitas, member.
I will invite members of the Professional Standards Bureau to invite themselves and to, well, invite themselves into the meeting and, of course, identify themselves.
Good afternoon to the chairman, Mr. Keith Scotland, other members of the Joint Select Committee on National Security, fellow colleagues. I am Suzette Martin, woman, acting Senior Superintendent of Police, presently head of the Professional Standards Bureau. On my extreme left.
Good afternoon to the chairman and other members. My name is Ricardo Montes. I'm the acting superintendent of police with the Professional Standards Bureau.
On my extreme right.
Good afternoon to the chairman and other members of the committee. I am Amir Mohammed, a police sergeant active attached to the Professional Standards Bureau.
Welcome. What we would have, I'll ask the acting senior superintendent Suzette Martin to give us a brief 2-minute opening remarks before we commence our question and answering session.
Thank you, sir. As police officers, we are entrusted with a vast amount of authority, including lawful authority to use force when necessary. It's important that the police undertake these powers in a manner that is lawful and is respectful to the public in accordance with the laws of Trinidad and Tobago. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service departmental policies and procedures so as to protect and serve with pride. The Professional Standards Bureau was established on 15th July 2011 to ensure integrity, transparency, accountability, and efficiency in the performance of police officers' investigations. Also, to demonstrate to the community that officers must act fairly and impartially, and that there are systems in place to detect misconduct, abuses of police authority, facilitating criminal complaints against police officers. Public trust and cooperation are key elements of effective policing and are sometimes lost when police engage in unconstitutional or unprofessional conduct. Police misconduct includes violation of all laws of Trinidad and Tobago, especially the Police Service Act, Chapter 1501 and its regulations. The Professional Standards Bureau vigorously investigates and, where the evidence is obtained arrests and prosecutes police officers for various offenses and instances of obstruction of justice by law enforcement officers. These arrests engender greater public trust and confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. The Professional Standards Bureau welcomes the Joint Select Committee meeting today as we continue to act as a guardian of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service reputation, being impartial and conducts fair investigations with the highest standard. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly, Acting Senior Superintendent Suzette Martin. The Professional Standards Bureau did submit a paper to the committee, and there are some questions that the members, our members, would like to raise with you. I would call upon the Honorable Member for Parliament, Dr. Rudal Munilal, to commence with the questioning of the Professional Standards Bureau. Dr. Munilal.
Thank you very much, Chairman, and good afternoon to the members of the Professional Standards Bureau and the members of the national community and the media joining us for this very important discussion. I would just begin first, of course, by asking a few smaller questions before getting to a more complex issue that is troubling me. Well, first, Madam Martin, I believe it is. We did have a list before of persons who were going to attend, including one woman police corporal marshal. I gather that there was a last-minute change. I trust that she's not unwell. Is there any explanation for changing the team that was submitted earlier?
Censor.
Yes, hello? Did
Yes,
you hear the
sir.
question?
You hear the question?
Yes, I did, sir.
Right. We did not hear your answer.
There was a short mishap this afternoon, and unfortunately, Ms. Marshall could not attend. So we have Mr. Mohammed in her absence. She will be fine.
Okay, thank you very much. Madam, the first area is if you can just give us an appreciation of the current strength of the Bureau. And in a brief summary, some of the constraints that you may face given the very sensitive and important task that you outlined a few minutes ago.
So at present, the strength at the Professional Standards Bureau, we have 34 police officers who perform duties related to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service within Trinidad and Tobago. There are few constraints in terms of strength, in terms of technology, in terms of the global pandemic, where our evidence we need to retrieve from external stakeholders take much longer as it will normally be done. We also have the issue of a relocation of the office where we can have a better area to perform our duties efficiently and effectively.
So I take it that while these are constraints, they are not very significant constraints in terms of your work. I mean, notwithstanding the impact of the pandemic on cross-border cooperation, so to speak.
No, sir.
Could I just ask another area here? Now, I mean, I'm agreeing with you, of course, that to build public confidence in the police service in possibly every country in the world, we need to ensure an acceptable level of credibility and integrity, and dealing with police officers themselves who may run afoul of the law or accused of running afoul of the law is a very important function, given the need to build confidence in law enforcement. Ma'am, there have been a couple issues in the public domain within recent times with reference to the investigation of police officers. I am not in any way asking for any to divulge any information of a sensitive nature, of course. But if you can tell us whether these matters are coming to fruition, whether there's a timeline to complete investigation, there's a timeline to complete a report, for example. And I'm really asking the question related to the sensational reporting of matters involving the firearm unit within the TTPS. Could you confirm whether those matters involving reports of former Officer Barrington and I believe another gentleman, and of course a report from Mr. Stanley John, have these reports been passed to the Professional Service Bureau to conduct any investigation? And if so, is there some type of timeline? Again, I want to reiterate that I'm not, of course, asking or expecting that I will get or I need any information on the matters themselves. I'm just asking in terms of timelines.
So the Professional Standards Bureau, in company with other sections, started the farm inquiry in respect to the audit that was submitted by Mr. Stanley John. And I would say within the near future, you will get a better response on that investigation.
Ma'am, could you also confirm whether or not these respective reports have been sent to the National Security Council?
I cannot confirm that for you, sir. But I think my Acting Commissioner of Police of the Trinidad Police Service, Mr. Jacob, would be here shortly and he would be able to answer that question for you, sir.
Thank you. Could I ask another general question at this time? Given the work that you are doing and the very importance of that work, unless I missed it earlier, do you have a figure, a number, for example, of how many officers, law enforcement officers in the TTPS are now subject of any investigation by this particular bureau, so that we'll have a sense of the magnitude of any problem that we face at this time?
So if I go back to the year 2021, we have 133 police officers under investigation. If I go back to 2020, we have 124 officers. If I go back to 2019, we have 90 officers under investigation. 2018, we have 82 police officers under investigation.
Could you repeat the 2018, please?
In 2018, we have 82 police officers under investigation.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, there are 2 points I make about that. I noticed the climbing, but the other point is these are cumulative. So am I to assume the 124 of 2020 would really be including the 90 of 2019?
It will not be included, sir.
Oh, they are separate?
Yes, sir.
Okay. That by itself tells a story. Could you confirm whether or not those officers, just to confirm for the record, those are officers also on suspension or some disciplinary, disciplinary leave of whatever?
Not all of the officers at this time, sir.
Okay. Tell me, and maybe is important as well for the national community to understand the process, how long it may take between receiving a report to conduct an inquiry and finishing it. Meaning, I can ask it this way: in any particular year, how many matters are dispensed with, are completed where either action is taken at the court or at a disciplinary tribunal, or a matter is closed and the officer returns to his or her job?
Superintendent Ricardo Montes here, if I may.
Sure.
Okay. All right. So for 2021, we have 18 of those matters completed, meaning that we have 18 police officers that were charged and placed before the courts. And in 2020, we will have 16. So 16 of the matters mentioned would have been completed. Sure. Those officers will be charged and placed before the court. And in 2019, we have 23 matters, 23 police officers charged and placed before the court. And in 2018, we have 19 police officers that were charged and placed before the court. Of course, there will be other matters that where no criminal charges are preferred, and those matters are closed, no further police action.
Thank you very much, sir. Again, if you could, just for my benefit and the benefit of the viewers and listeners, if you were to name the 3 or 4 categories of areas where the persons where the matters have reached the court, what would be the 3 or 4 areas of violation, wrongdoing, law breaking that would appear?
Okay, well, first of all, misbehavior in public office. And as you know, misbehavior in public office could involve.
But I'm not sure I know, but I understand what you say.
Almost any offense. But as a police officer, misbehavior in public office is one of the main ones. Then we have corruption under the Prevention of Corruption Act. So a police officer engaged in any sort of taking bribe or taking money to do something that which the police service, he's not required to do. So that would be dealt with under the Prevention of Corruption. So we have that category. And then we also have perverting the course of public justice. So in that regard, so those are 3 that come to mind that are prevalent.
Okay, thank you very much. Chairman, I'd like to leave it there. The other colleagues can ask, and of course, I reserve the right to return to some issues. Thank you all very much, members of the Professional Standards Bureau, for your assistance.
Welcome.
We would now ask Senator Richards, Paul Richards.
Thank you, Chairman.
You have the floor.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon again to the persons representing the Professional Standards Bureau. Madam Martin, you said earlier on that there were 34 officers who are attached to the PSB. What is the full strength of the PSB? Do those 34 officers represent full strength in terms of resources, HR?
At this time, yes, sir.
So you're up to full strength?
No, sir. The sanction strength is 54, and 54. The actual strength we have at this time is 34.
So what is being done to remedy that deficit, and how is that deficit impacting the operations of the Professional Standards Bureau, given the fact that you've identified between 2021 and 2018 429 issues engaging your attention in that 4-year span, and you identified 18, 16, 23, and 19 respectively between 2021 to 2018 that have been resolved and are before the court. That may not include, as you said, other issues that may not be attracting criminal sanction.
So what we have planned, which I discussed with my Assistant Commissioner of Police, Criminal Division, and the Commissioner, is to have another location for the Professional Standards Bureau office. At present, the location cannot facilitate any more officers. So we are trying to get a location, and then we can have the sanction strength at the Bureau. And
that's the only challenge with getting the sanction strength. You have the person identified, the recruitment has already been exercised, awaiting that scenario to be resolved?
Well, 2 locations were identified and documents were sent out, so we are waiting responses on those locations. However, in the meantime, we have assistance from the Special Investigative Unit and the Financial Investigation Bureau, who assist us when necessary.
One of the issues Dr. Moon identified, of course, that we all know is one of the challenges with the TTPS is the issue of public trust confidence, which translates or doesn't translate into public cooperation with the TTPS in identifying, reporting, and providing evidence and witnesses to solve crimes. You identify technological, also evidence gathering, and you identify the relocation issue a short while ago. What sorts of technological challenges are you experiencing presently?
Good afternoon, if I may. I'm Amir Mohammed, Police Sergeant Active.
We hardly hear you. You need to put your mic a bit closer, please.
Good afternoon. You hear me now?
Yes, a little better.
I'm Amir Mohammed, if I may, Police Sergeant Active. Some of the technological challenges we have, CCTV footages. Sometimes we obtain CCTV footages of police misconduct or otherwise. The footage is not all the time clear. Technology is not available in order to have it properly and properly modified, so to speak, if that is the correct word, enhanced, sorry, so that it can be evidence and persons in the footage, offenders, can be identified. In addition to the use of cellular telephones and the extraction of the devices, sometimes it's not all the time fast incoming as is needed. In addition to those, we from time to time engage the assistance of the Special Investigations Unit to assist with surveillance and so that we could be able to gather intelligence through means that persons from that unit would engage to help bolster these technological shortcomings, so to speak. So that is some of the challenges we have, those two mainly. Really.
Thank you. The next question may be more appropriate for the Acting Commissioner of Police, but I'm sure your perspective will add some gravity to the situation, gravitas to the situation. Mr. Mohammed just mentioned the issue of CCTV cameras. This committee, I've been honored to be a member for the past, I think, 5 or 6 years, and we have been regaled with promise after promise, guarantee after guarantee, from as far back as former Commissioner Stephen Williams through to the immediate recent predecessor to the present Commissioner, Mr. Griffith, and the present Commissioner, Mr. Acting Commissioner Jacob, about body cams for police officers, particularly in high tension scenarios. Is the Professional Standards Bureau an advocate for police officers to be wearing mandatory body cams, so that very evidence that Mr. Mohammed identified earlier on can assist in either exonerating or adding evidence to bring errant officers to justice, or officers who are engaged in unprofessional conduct?
Yes. Ricardo, Montes, and if I may, certainly from the Bureau's point of view, we would most certainly welcome body cameras for police officers. And as you rightly say, it could either exonerate the police officer in terms of an allegation made against it, or it could form part of our evidence to take action against errant police officers. So the answer to that is, oh, yes, from our level, we support body cameras for police officers.
I have been personally regaled with officers who are interested, and I'm trying to be careful here, in reporting on colleagues who they believe or they have witnessed to be involved in either illegal activity or unprofessional activity. Is there a mechanism for reporting which does not put which protects officers' safety if they report on colleagues whom they believe are involved in illegal activity or unprofessional activity, so that because the service is operating in a small jurisdiction, sometimes there's a challenge of, well, if I rat out my colleague, I'm chastised or ostracized by my other colleagues. Is there a mechanism through the PSB for that kind of reporting of errant behavior?
What we do whenever a situation arises where we get information from, let's say, a member within a group, a police officer, let's say you have a department and something went wrong and one of the members report to us. Sometimes we do one of the two things, have that person removed from that environment so as to protect that individual from any reprisal that he may get from anyone. And if at all anything is reported by the individual who supplied the information, if he or she is known, then depending on what action is taken against that individual, the Professional Standards Bureau will now look at it to see if the police officer or those who would have acted against that officer, if they do anything breaching any of the regulation or any criminal conduct, and then we'll take action against that police officer.
Member Richards,
Yes.
May I piggyback on your question, please? And I want to engage the PSB. Member Munilal, I want to engage you in this. I want to engage Member Paul Richards and the Senate because it will be coming to the Senate. We do have Mr. Mohammed, whistleblower legislation that is before Parliament. It is still before Parliament and come back on Friday, God's willing. Do you think, members of the PSB, that the introduction, and let's discuss it openly here, that the introduction of the whistleblower legislation may assist or encourage persons who regale Senator Richards, Member Richards, with those issues, if they have the protection of the whistleblower legislation, that may encourage the reporting of such misconduct? Members of the PSB, let me hear your answer. Member Munilal, you would be entitled to ask a follow-up question relative to this. Member Richards, we are not at all taking over, but it's a very topical question and issue that you have raised.
Chairman.
Go ahead.
My thought process.
Go ahead, PSB.
Okay, from the PSB standpoint, yes, we most certainly would welcome that piece of legislation. Just this morning, it was read, and we saw where there's protection for the person who bring in the information, and also there are mechanisms in place for information that might be erroneous, so it could be dealt with. But more importantly, we think that it will encourage persons to come forward and bring information if they know that they have this level of protection.
Is recorded unless any other member wants to add anything.
Can I raise a related matter? Could the members of the Professional Standards Bureau confirm that you all have read and studied the whistleblower legislation, and indeed you have placed your comments? I heard the officer a minute ago. Have you placed your comments on that piece of legislation in writing and forward to the Commissioner of Police or the Minister of National Security at that level?
I recall back in 2018, 2019, there was a discussion when it was first introduced and comments were placed. However, in this form, the form that it is in, is, I would say from my point of view, is a cursory reading of the legislation. So I cannot say in depth, and I did not generate any response in writing to the commissioner, but I read the legislation. The bill.
And you are confirming that its predecessor, there was something in writing put to the commissioner. But in any event, and I do not at all want to put words in your mouth, but in any event, the recent one, the one that is current before the Parliament, that there is support for it from the PSB.
Yes, I'm confident that there is.
All right.
The point I'm making, and listen, I'm not going to beat around the bush because we have other colleagues to address them.
Yes, please.
The issue is very clear, I think, Mr. Mohammed. there is no dispute as to the commitment you are demonstrating and others have to whistleblower legislation in principle. I think there's no dispute. There's a dispute as to whether it can be operationalized, it is workable. And you are confirming that you have had a cursory look at it. And I will go forward and ask you, do you think the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and your bureau, already understaffed and with 400 police officers more or less under investigation, your bureau will not be able to participate because this is another strata of institution being established. The Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, as you may know, is also a designated authority.
Yes, yes, indeed. However, what I'm looking at is the bigger picture. If it is that there's corruption in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and you have persons who may have information, and the legislation could make that person feel safe to come forward and give that information, whether it is dealt with by the Professional Standards Bureau or the other entity as mentioned in the legislation. I'm looking at it from that point of view. It's a matter of cleaning up the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service so that in the end we can build greater public trust and confidence in Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
To Sergeant Mohammed, Senator Richards, you continue with your questions. I don't want at all to hijack your questioning, so you continue.
Thank you, Chairman. Just two quick areas before I defer to my other colleagues. But I was going to go to the whistleblower and get the Bureau's perspective on it, but since that's not been covered. Part of the remit of the Bureau is, of course, also to investigate what may not reach the bar of criminal behavior, but certainly may be unprofessional. In the 11th Parliament, a former Commissioner of Police came before the Joint Select Committee, National Security, and indicated one of the issues facing the police service in Trinidad and Tobago is that unprofessional behavior or indiscipline, in some instances amounting to unprofessional behavior, is not identified in a consistent manner and is not dealt with from the HR department of the TTPS, and also mechanisms put in place to encourage in a productive HR environment the rehabilitation of officers who may run afoul of rules and regulations. Can you make a comment on that from the perspective of the Professional Standards Bureau, because your name is the Professional Standards Bureau, and very often the rules and the conduct starts to fall apart from a disciplinary perspective and then raises to unprofessional and then criminal activity.
Yes, and I agree with you with that statement, and Ricardo Montes here, sorry, because we must be able to deal with discipline matters in order to prevent criminal behavior. But for the professional standards point, we look at reports that come before us, and most of the reports we're looking at criminal conduct. However, sometimes in our investigation, it may not meet the criminal threshold. And after discussion, let's say with the DPP or whatnot, we come to a conclusion or a decision that the matter could better be dealt with on a departmental investigation under the regulation, a breach of the regulation. So at that point, the matters are then sent to the Police Complaints Division for further investigation. So notwithstanding, they may not be criminally, the person may not be liable criminally, but the matters are then forwarded to the Complaints Division for departmental investigation. So,
are you satisfied that department, the Police Complaints Division, is operating optimally? Because if that division is not operating optimally, it means that some of these officers may end up on your roster over and over again without remediation.
I don't want to comment on whether or not they're operating optimally, but I know that there are a number of reports that...
Do officers come back, in terms of certain names, come back to you repeatedly?
It has happened at times, and most certainly when a case like that occurs, we take a very deep look at the investigation and we get results.
What does that mean? Because if a name is coming back to you repeatedly and it doesn't meet the threshold of criminal activity, but the person continues with unprofessional, unbecoming behavior, it is a stain on the police service operation. It diminishes public trust and confidence and the effectiveness of the police service.
Yes, and I'm saying that I agree with you, and I'm saying to I'm admitting, yes, there are times when a name may come up more than one occasion. And however, when that happens, it raises a flag. And sometimes we collate the reports together that we have on that person, and we look at it in depth. We look at those reports in depth, and we get results from it. Because there's not a case where a name will continuously come up and nothing can be done. I don't think I come across that situation, but I have come across situations where a particular name may have come up more than one occasion, and it was dealt with in that manner. A closer look, more resources are then directed to deal with that situation, and we get results. And the person would be charged and go before the court based on our findings.
One final area I want to explore in this round. Your remit is technically very different to the Police Complaints Authority. First of all, what is your working relationship with the Police Complaints Authority, and how is that relationship managed, first of all? Are there regular meetings, or is it managed through the Office of the Commissioner?
I would say we have an excellent relationship. I know Mr. David West is in constant communication with the head of the bureau, Ms. Suzette Martin. And what they do, they liaise with us. They always send documents. Now, we have had some hindrance in the past in terms of material resource, because they would ask for information and we would seek to provide the information by copying documents and things. Sometimes, we have issues even with the copier. So we would liaise with the Police Complaints Authority and find out from them, well, okay, let's see how we could manage this shortage. And if it is that they're going to accept a soft copy. So what happens now, we would scan information and provide for them. So the relationship is good. And then sometimes we communicate, they provide for us persons that we could reach out to at the Police Complaints Authority. And once you see you make that connection and you reach out to that person, it may not be the director, you reach out to that person and that person will be able to supply the information when it comes to hand.
I've had several interviews with Mr. West, Director West, and he has complained on several occasions about the timeliness about how information is transferred. Final question, Mr. Chair. Is there, in your opinion, any unproductive overlap in jurisdiction between the Police Complaints Authority and the Professional Standards Bureau? And I asked that question based on a report that in January 2021, reports arose in the media concerning failures to properly investigate and conduct of now retired ACP Hackshaw. Allegations true, even though that the PCA's investigation recommended that charges be laid. The matter was not initially sent to the DPP because the PSB's investigations found there was no evidence to prosecute, and there was a serious conflict in the findings of the PSB versus the PSC regarding very serious allegations. So how often do those types of conflicts arise?
Before you answer, we wouldn't want to itemize anyone, but deal with the issue raised by Member Richards, please.
Certainly, Chairman. Yeah, not specifically the situation, but the scenario.
What I can say, I joined the Professional Standard Bureau in June of 2021, and from then to now, I've developed a relationship with the Police Complaints Authority where we can work hand in hand, share the information. And I want to assure you that the PCA is an independent body that protects citizens, and any information that they share with us, I would ensure that we look at the investigation thoroughly, and all investigations are still ongoing.
But if I could, PCA is on record as saying that very often the timeliness of information coming from the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, maybe from your office, maybe from the office of the commissioner, is not in keeping with an expeditious investigation in very sensitive matters? Has that situation been resolved? Because the director of the PCA is on record as having challenges in that regard in the past. And I will defer after this question, Chairman.
So at this time, it's a work in progress. We are working on it. What happens, most of the example, fatal police shooting are investigated by officers in the division. And the Professional Standards Bureau has oversight over those investigations. So we have implemented a policy now where we give timelines and we meet with those officers on a monthly basis where they can now complete those investigations. If the matter is a closure, we also have them prepare the matter to send for inquest at the coroner's court. So we give ourselves 90 days to complete the outstanding investigations, and also the new investigations that are coming up. We also give timelines when we give the instrument to the officers and we remind them about the deadlines so we can work with PCA in a timely manner.
And thank you very much, Senator Richards. That is you. I now call upon Member Kennedy Richards, if there are any questions that you have, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, to all members here. Pleasant afternoon. I just have a few questions, Mr. Chairman, and I will be brief. First one is, if an officer who is under investigation resigns or retires, what happens to that investigation?
That investigation continues, sir. And on completion investigation, if that officer is found to any criminal comes out of that investigation, he would be charged, sir. So it continues.
Okay, great. And is there any collaboration between the Bureau and any international agencies on investigations of a serious police conduct?
So there are few that we have at present.
There's a few.
Yes.
Okay. In terms of recommendations, which would aid in your timely execution of the Bureau's work, do you have any recommendations, or have you submitted any recommendations to your seniors with respect to assisting you guys in doing timely work?
So for 2022, I have met with the Commissioner of Police and my Assistant Commissioner and Deputy Commissioner of Police, and we have in train unity where the Professional Standards Bureau and the Police Complaints Division will be merging so we can expedite the matters swiftly. And when the matters doesn't reach a criminal threshold, the continuation of the Police Complaints Division could run smoothly, and we have the investigations moving a lot faster so we can get rid of the errant officers in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Because one of those things is quite troubling, because just to find out how many total investigations you have ongoing present.
So at present, we have over 500 investigations over a 4-year period.
Could I safely say that those officers who are under investigation are at work pending the outcome of those investigations?
Some of the officers are at work, some are on suspension.
Okay, it's based on the gravity of the situation.
Yes.
Could I say that? Okay, and that's 500 over a 4-year period. And so you said
yes.
When Senator Richards was president, that you said timelines, and I think I would have heard you say 6 months or something like that. Does that mean that you don't have enough staff to deal with a backlog, or is it that the officers are just boosting the timelines or not meeting their deadlines?
So it depends on the magnitude of the investigation. I go back to an investigation can be completed within 2 to 3 days. It may take weeks, it may take months, but it all depends on the magnitude. It depends on the availability of the evidence. So I may want to put a timeline, say 30 days, run to 6 months, but also I have the external agencies. If I give you from 2015 to 18, most files are completed, but we are waiting the external agency, Forensic Science Center, we are waiting the scientific analysis to complete these investigations. So yes, what I'm hoping to do is to meet with the head of the Forensic Science Center so that we can see how fast we could have these exhibits processed and get back to the officers so these investigations can be completed. But I can say 50% of the investigations are almost there. We just need scientific evidence to complete those investigations.
Members, we have just about 5 minutes remaining. Member Richards, do you have? I would want to give Member De Freitas.
I have one question again, Mr. Chair. Right? Just permit me one question. Probably take 20 seconds.
Go ahead.
Could I? Okay. Right.
Go ahead.
You formed 2 units. Which one? One was the gender-based violence unit, and the other one was establishment of the special victims unit or special victims department. Do you have any success stories since the formation of those units?
Give us a very short answer, please, because I want to give Senate Member De Freitas a chance to ask a couple of questions.
Yes, so there are success stories since the merging of those 2 units. I would not be able at this point in time to go into detail as to the success, but there have been success.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, and I give it to
Member De Freitas. I will just have 2 questions, so you go and go ahead. Remember, of course, we're coming in to the commissioner at 3:30. Go ahead, Member De Freitas.
Mr. Chairman, I promise I won't be too long because I think my colleagues great job in terms of asking questions. My questions would be a tad bit different. The first one being the Professional Standards Bureau is populated by whom exactly? Is it populated by police officers?
Yes, sir. Only police officers, special reserve and regular police officers.
Right. On average, what stage of career would you say that particular bureau is populated by officers? Or what stage of the officer's career?
So it depends because we have sergeants, we have inspectors, we have constables, and also we have special reserve officers. So
all right. The reason I'm asking that is because I'm looking at the entire process by which, the objectives of the Bureau is to be met. And I'm wondering if it would not be more efficient and effective if it is that some more separation occurs in relation to the Bureau, in that officers are taken straight out of the academy. And I noticed that in the submission you all gave, there's external and internal training that is supposed to be continual. But if it is that members come out of the academy straight into the Bureau, you don't have what you call a mixing, in the sense that individuals who have worked within the police service, they've come out in terms of batches, they've come out in terms of various divisions that they've worked with. And now you're asking them to investigate individuals who they would have formed a close relationship with. Let me just explain why I'm saying it might be better and more efficient to go that route. Of the 500 investigations that you've indicated over the last 4 years has been occurring, how many of them have been started due to other police officers complaining?
Can you repeat the question, sir?
Of the 500 investigations currently ongoing, how many of those are based on other police officers complaining to the Professional Standards Bureau that resulted in the start of an investigation?
I would say about 30% of those investigations.
30%. Okay.
Yes.
Because one of the things that we also get from the PCA, which is supposed to be an independent body, as Senator Richards indicated, is that the PCA always complains that they don't get as much cooperation when they're doing the investigations. Is that a problem that you also find in terms of the Bureau?
So I am working on that issue, and I think that within the next few months that will change. I've seen progress, and I work closely with the PCA.
Okay. So you've seen progress. Can you explain, because we have the public listening as well, exactly what kind of progress you've seen and how you intend to resolve that? Because once again, as I've indicated in my first line of questioning, is that you have individuals coming in from deep within the service, and they're sort of investigating themselves, not themselves as in person, but the unit that is the TTPS. And I'm asking in relation to efficiency and effectiveness, that if they started from the beginning of their career, trained within this Professional Standards Bureau, and they're only part of the Professional Standards Bureau, that you might actually get more cooperation, because these individuals would have that authority and mandate, and they don't have that deep-rooted connection in the middle or even later stage of their career, having come through that system. So just for the public, explain how you intend to gain progress in that, and how you intend to resolve that issue, because it's something that the PCA complains about all the time. And obviously you just indicated that you have the same issue.
But so the Professional Standard Bureau, I would say, is like an elite section in Toronto Police Service, and you need officers with experience, investigative experience. So even though we are mindful at looking at officers out of the training college, you cannot take too much of those officers, because they may not have the experience, and based on the strength and the magnitude of the investigation, sometimes officers have to be responsible, and they have to know investigation so they can go out and work on their own at times. But if we have persons coming out of the training college, you'll have to have that time to mentor, and then you'll have to have officers working alongside them to get them up to par. But there are officers who are competent, they're experienced, so they can manage. So I think that most of the issues in the files are not really the investigators, but are more the scientific part of the investigation. So if you have a straightforward investigation, it can be completed within 3-4 days.
Okay. Senior Superintendent Martin and Member De Freitas, if needs be, we can follow up those questions. Any other questions that you would have?
Chairman, I would just have 1 or 2 questions.
I
thought I had a reward for being the first to ask.
No, the reward was time was taken. We do have the Commissioner of Police coming, and you may, and I will ask members to morph your questions into a way that it would be answered by the Commissioner. We would stick to our 10-minute time frame so that everyone can get an equal opportunity. So I will keep the lineup as we agreed to, but even my question, I will not ask it of the Professional Standards Bureau, but I will tweak it in a way that the Commissioner of Police can respond. If, however, there are questions that are burning, you put it in writing, and I will ask the Secretariat to forward it. Senior Superintendent Martin, if we put these questions to you in writing, you undertake to respond, yes?
Yes, sir.
So with that being said, we want to thank you for attending, and we would now just suspend for a very brief time to reconvene with the Commissioner of Police. Thank you very kindly.
Thank you, sir, for having us today.
Commissioner, good afternoon to you. This is Brian Caesar, Secretary to the Committee.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome as we reconvene the 12th meeting of the Joint Select Committee on National Security. And as we reconvene this meeting, I would like to welcome again those present as well as those viewing and listening as our audience. This meeting is being broadcast live, and it's being broadcast live on the Parliament Channel 11 and Radio 105.5 FM and the Parliament's YouTube channel, Parlview. I'd want to welcome the Acting Commissioner of Police and his team. My name is Keith Scotland, member, and I will ask the members of the committee to introduce themselves, starting with the Vice Chairman.
Good afternoon, Commissioner and team. Paul Richards, Vice Chair.
Yeah, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Mr. Commissioner and your team. Arudal Munilal, member.
Yes, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Commissioner and team.
Okay, good afternoon.
Good afternoon, Nigel Freitas, member.
Yeah, good afternoon.
I will now ask the Acting Commissioner and his team to introduce themselves, beginning with the Acting Commissioner of Police.
Well, my name is MacDonald Jacob. I'm the Acting Commissioner of Police. And together with me is two of my colleagues and Mr. Francis.
Good afternoon, everyone. Cohen Francis, Senior Superintendent, Acting Central Intelligence Bureau, TTPS.
Good afternoon, Deputy Commissioner Acting Wendell Williams, Investigations and Intelligence.
We'd like to expressly thank you all for taking time off to attend before this very important committee and this very important sitting. As you are well aware, this inquiry is into the safety and security of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago and the public concerns about the performance of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. That being said, you would very well agree with me that that is indeed a most serious concern. By way of background, the purpose of this meeting is really to commence discussions into and inquire from the stakeholders and understand the affairs and issues as they relate to the performance of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and in what ways we can strengthen the police service. I've already stated the guidelines, but just for you, Commissioner, and your team that now come in, we want to ensure that when one person is speaking, that all other microphones are turned off, and I will give myself that memo. And if you're not speaking, therefore, mute your mics. Please, if there's a raise hand feature that is necessary, that is there, if you do need it, we will invite you now, Acting Commissioner, to make a brief opening remarks so that we can get into the meat of this inquiry. Over to you, Acting Commissioner.
Right. Again, good afternoon to all and all the listenership, viewership. It is indeed a pleasure to get this opportunity to answer questions and to give the public the way forward and how we in the executive of the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service and myself, how we look at things to deal with security within Trinidad and Tobago. We know this is, in some persons' mind, a humongous task, but we have the necessary experience and professionals within the police service to handle the situation. There is, in fact, a gathering of the forces, as I will say, in relation to the criminal elements within our space, where we are actually seeing a combination of persons who we consider being the street gangs and conventional criminals actually linking with what we call the white-collared or criminals in the upper echelons in our society who have available to them a lot of resources. Thus, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service need to adapt quickly and change to deal with what is happening around us. We also have an international incursion of particular activities within Trinidad and Tobago that have joined up with the criminals within Trinidad and Tobago. So that task is what we are handling from the area from human trafficking to gang activities, so the basic street robberies and other issues. But we also have a high incident of white-collared crime, which is also influencing what is playing out on the streets. So we are here this evening, as the questions and the discussion proceed, to indicate to you all some of the plans and other initiatives that we will be embarking on to deal with the challenges before us. Thank you.
Thank you very kindly for those opening remarks, Acting Commissioner. We would now want to go directly into the questions being posed by the members of this committee. Members, we will try very much to stick within our allotted time frame so that every member can get an equal time to ask questions. Member Munilal, would you please start with your questions?
Thank you. Thank you very much. And again, good afternoon, Mr. Commissioner and your team.
Good afternoon.
Just a couple, to me, more straightforward questions to start with here. We got some information a few minutes ago from a division of the police, and I just wanted to follow up a question on that. We got some very interesting data, and we learned that from the Professional Standards Bureau, every year they gave us data 2021, 2020, 2019, 2018, of the amount of officers who would be facing investigations, so to speak. The data they gave us this evening, which was quite interesting, is in 2021, 18 officers matters had been completed and referred to the court, meaning they would face some type of prosecution. In 2020, that was 16, and in 2019, that was 19. So more or less 16 to 20 officers per year being investigated out of what could be about 400. Matters would go to the court, meaning the court and that system would continue. I wanted to ask Mr. Commissioner first, do you track, for example, whether it's the Professional Standards Bureau, any bureau in the service, do you track how many of these cases that go involving police officers are completed by way of a conviction, a necessary conviction per year? So in a simple way, if 18 cases go to the court in 1 year, they will have other cases, of course, years previous. How many matters would be dealt with by the court per year? Because it cannot be the matter of that time because it rolls. How many are dealt with in terms of a conviction? Do you all keep any type of data on this? That's the first issue.
Well, you know that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have a records management database where all reports are actually on that database and can be tracked easily. It is directly linked to our court prosecutors in the courts, and as the matters go on, the matters are updated. So the matter of the question of tracking it is very, very simple. We still operate with both a manual and a digital system. So you'll find in some instances at the court, they will have the book, as you will know, where the recorder will have all that information. But that information is also now transferred to our computerized system. So tracking it is very easy to track that information.
Okay, Mr. Commissioner, could you undertake, because as you say, it's an easy thing really, but we will not normally have that type of information at hand. Could you undertake to just present us to this committee with the figures from, let's say, 2018 to 2020, 3 years of that, the amount of officers convicted at the High Court based upon investigations of the Professional Standards Bureau, so we can get that data. Is that okay?
Yes, but then you will also know that clearly that if a matter that happened within the last 3 years, unless that matter is a matter that is a summary matter that is finishing in the magistrate court, then we will have some completion. Most matters that go to the High Court, where you may have a preliminary inquiry, stay much longer than that period as you identify.
Well, what I meant is that if a matter is determined in 2022, for example, that matter may have started in 5 or 6 years before. I understand that. But it may be determined in 2022 or 2021. So if there's any data at all that can help, we appreciate it. But I understand the complexity of the matter.
Yeah.
I'd like to move on. Is that okay?
Yes, no problem at all.
Yeah, because if we can get the data, we get it. Mr. Commissioner, as you know, we face a situation in the country with enormous amount of apprehension in some areas, fear and so on. In the city of San Fernando, as you know, quite recently, I believe last Saturday, a security guard was gunned down during a robbery. I wondered if you, and you clearly understand the importance of public confidence. You clearly understand that the business community in particular, it has come to our attention that several businessmen in that San Fernando High Street area are now migrating as a result of the issues of security and policing and so on. When businessmen close, workers lose job, income is not circulated, wealth is not created, and so on. And that's the downside of criminal activity. I wanted to ask you specifically, this is my second question, I'll only have one more, whether or not we are at full strength, and what is the level of strength? What is the level of activity of the patrols, police patrols and so on, along in the cities, the towns, and so on? What is the situation with that? Or are we undermanned or under-resourced as far as it relates to patrolling effectively?
Right. Well, in the first, if I just go ahead without responding to some of the statements made, all right, it wouldn't be correct, because in relation to the matter you spoke about, I, as the acting commissioner, found that it was necessary to go on the ground. I was, in fact, on the scene on Saturday, and I interacted with persons from the business community. I interacted with the mayor. I did not get the indication of persons per se leaving or anything like that. And just yesterday, I was in San Fernando with the mayor and with head of the business community in San Fernando, where we had a meeting, in fact, with the senior superintendent and other senior officers, where we lay out to them what are some of the things that will be done and why we had that gap existing on Saturday. So that demonstrates that I'm fully aware the necessity for that confidence that is needed and trust in the police. So we need to go and interact with the business community. And that was done not only in San Fernando, but in other instances that we have situations. And as you're aware, that 3 of the persons suspected to be involved in that activities were in fact arrested. Items were recovered, firearms were recovered, drugs were recovered, both marijuana and cocaine, with the quick action of the police linking with the analytical section. So that and all will also build the confidence and trust within the police. As it relates to the latter aspect that you spoke about, we are challenged just like any other institution or organization within Trinidad and Tobago in this pandemic as it relates to COVID-19. So constantly we are having officers who are contracting COVID-19, and several of them have to go on quarantine, sometimes for long periods, sometimes for short periods. But we have contingency planning, and one of our contingency plans that helps significantly is some of our part-time special reserve officers who come forward and fill the gap. That relationship also with the municipal police, because sometimes they have challenges too. But since we are working together as a team, we tend to fill the gaps. Right? And what happened, like on Saturday, there was a little communication that did not take place that caused that where we didn't have the number of foot patrols we normally have. You heard the business person down there said they are accustomed seeing a lot of patrols, but on this Saturday for that little period, even though they were mobile patrols who were able to lock down San Fernando and intercept a vehicle. So again, we have challenges, but we have contingency planning. Sometimes we take persons from one division and put them in the other division to assist, depending on the situation that we are having in relation to COVID-19.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. And I understand the point made. I was really focusing on the while I recognize and I'm very elated that persons were apprehended and items recovered and so on, I was more concerned with the preventative aspect of patrolling effectively and ensuring that we have the heightened sense of police presence in the city and the towns and so on, and you're given an assurance of that. The last matter, because I'm sure you agree with me that we should go up front and get the patrols and the regular presence of police rather than lapse and somebody dies and then we recover items or recover persons and so on. So it really is the patrols I was interested in at that time. Mr. Commissioner, the last matter I want to raise with you is that, as you are aware, there have been a lot of news, revelation and news on social media and the national press and so on, involving a matter of the former Police Service Commission. Could you confirm whether or not a report has been made concerning the conduct of the former Police Commission Chairman, Bliss Prasad, by the former Commissioner, Gary Griffith, and what might be the status of that investigation?
Right.
Member?
Yes, I'm
Commissioner,
here.
Commissioner, if that is indeed so, wouldn't that be a little prejudicial at this stage and for this forum, public forum, Member Munilal and the Commissioner? The final decision, of course, is you, Mr. Commissioner, because you're the one who would be possessed of any information. But I just want to put a little caution out there relative to the prejudicing or the potential prejudicing of any investigation, even at this early stage, and going into any details at this stage. So I just say that out there, and I leave you to your discretion to answer the question if you see fit.
Yes, I'm guided, Chair. I will just go back a bit. In fact, Mr. Munilal talk about patrol. I really want to use the opportunity for you all to know that we have now introduced a new patrol policy within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, a deployment policy, and also a vehicle maintenance policy, right? And when I went to San Fernando yesterday, I lay out to them how it will be done and how we will be closing the gap. So the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and that is to influence all police divisions within Trinidad and Tobago, and we will have the official launch of it, but I'm indicating that since around the Christmas time, I've been talking about it from Arima to when I did all the launching of our Christmas plan of the new patrol policy and what we are doing. In relation to the last question that he asked, right, it is out there in the public that I mentioned already that we in fact receive some correspondence from the former commissioner, and those correspondence were in fact sent to our special branch to analyze, to look at, to see whether or not there is any need for our special other investigative units to be involved, and the special branch is engaged with that at this moment. And that is the answer that I wish to give concerning that.
Mr. Commissioner, thank you very, very much for that answer. I'll just go to my final question, which is not related to this. We got some information a few minutes ago from the other bureau that one of the challenges they face, and it might be a challenge not only for the Professional Standards Bureau, but also for the police service as a whole, concerns the CCTV camera and footage where you do have footage. The footage may not be the best or is not good enough and that type of thing. Has there been any contact between the TTPS and the providers of those cameras and the technology vis-a-vis quality of footage, quality of the hardware and the software, so that this could assist the police service in getting the appropriate scientific quality so that actions can be taken in pursuit of criminal elements? I hope you understand.
Yes, I understand clearly. In the past, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service did submissions to the Ministry of National Security, that the ministry is responsible for dealing with the providers concerning cameras. I know as a fact that just recently certain work was done in relation to cameras, and there was some signing of sub-agreement in order to increase the number of cameras throughout Trinidad and Tobago. Right? And at present, in some instances, we are getting some good feedback. There's a significant improvement. Just recently, I actually opened our operational center in Tobago, and I was amazed with the sort of footage that we were getting. I opened our operational center in Chaguanas also recently, and we are in fact getting good outcomes, and we are also linking with the business community, so that we can, in our operational centers, get footage that can help us to accelerate and assist with these investigations. So the other aspect that you asked about it, the minister in the Ministry of National Security could now probably elucidate a bit more in relation to that agreement, right, to improve the whole camera systems throughout Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much. Mr. Commissioner, just one follow-up on that.
Member Munilal, no.
Just one more on this.
Member,
I'll take off the camera.
Member, our time, I would want...
Okay, fine, Chairman. Fine, Chairman, I don't want to run afoul of the Chairman.
Member Richards, Paul Richards, please commence your questions.
Thank you, Chairman. Good afternoon, Commissioner. And
good afternoon again.
Just following up on that technology issue that Member Munilal asked regarding CCTV camera, as I indicated to your colleagues in the Professional Standards Bureau, we've been regaled with promises of consistent application of body cams since then Acting Commissioner Williams, then Commissioner Griffith, and now you sit in the chair as Acting Commissioner. Can you give us a status update on the procurement and acquisition of body cams at the level that can provide evidence, in particular high stakes encounters where there are contrary narratives between persons who may be on the ground, the public, and the police officers in terms of those situations. And what is your take on that, and how assiduously are you pursuing the issue of body cams and dash cams for police, which is general standard practice, best practice across the globe?
Yeah, very, very crucial, both for the question of developing evidence for investigations and also to exonerate persons when allegations are made. The cameras are definitely necessary. But at present, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service have 160 functional body cameras, which is divided among approximately 15 different units, meaning to say that every task force in each division is given a certain amount of body cameras. The ITF, the Guard and Emergency Branch, the SORT, and others. So therefore, if you divide it, you will see that there's a small number, concerning the amount of interaction the police will have from all the other various units throughout Trinidad and Tobago. So definitely 160 cannot really, it's just a drop in the ocean. However, recently we acquired 750 additional body cameras, and we are in the process of doing the distribution, especially to deal with the frontline officers. And there is intentions to acquire another 1,200 within the next few months. So that is where we are with body cameras. But what assists us tremendously, though, is where a lot of our vehicles are in fact fitted with cameras that is linked at times to our operational centers. So when something is happening and those cameras pick it up, it will be beamed to our operational centers and it will be recorded, where the operational centers could guide the operation that is taking place. We need to improve also in the amount of vehicles that carry those cameras. But we recognize the importance of it in these contemporary times. It is totally, totally necessary. And a lot of the allegations that are made in relation to police and police investigations and police searches can be eliminated by the use of these body cams. And I am in full support of it, and I will be going full throttle to ensure that as far as possible that all frontline officers are fitted with body cameras. We have a departmental order that governs it so that if persons do particular things, it will in fact be an offense that they can be charged before a tribunal if these cameras are not used at the right time. So all of that is already put in place, but we are now acquiring the cameras and dealing with the distribution.
Well, that's the most encouraging I've heard in the last 6 years, I'll tell you, because to go from 150 to 750 in hand, and then an additional 1,200 puts you to over 2,000, if my math is okay. And I really hope that is a standard operating procedure, and officers face the brunt of the regulations if these cameras are applied consistently, particularly in high-stakes areas. My next question goes to the issue of your colleagues indicating. And before I go on, I just want to put on the record my thanks and appreciation. I know your job is often a thankless job with a lot of blows aimed at you because of the sensitive issue of national security. So I know while you are under examination here, you are sacrificing and your team is sacrificing, the officers are sacrificing. So I just want to put the appreciation on the table. Your colleagues indicated, and Member Munila raised it, 2021, 133 matters under investigation, 18 to the courts. 2021, 24, 16 to the courts. 2019, 90 under investigation, 23 to the courts. And 2018, 82 under investigation and 19 to the courts. What is the policy when it reaches the threshold for the DPP or the TTPS to send these matters to the court? Are officers immediately on suspension? Are they fired? Because I think you're on record as saying persons who bring the service into disrepute can be fired for unprofessional conduct. It doesn't have to reach a conviction. What's the policy on that? Are they still on the payroll? How do you determine that?
Well, you have two instances. When there's an allegation, The officers, some officers are placed on suspension. When they are on suspension, they are off the job, but they will get their full salary. However, when you are charged, there is a difference. You are interdicted, and you can be interdicted on half pay, 3/4 pay. It all depends on the circumstances and how the commissioner of police will look at it. So once you are charged before the court, you are interdicted, right? And your uniform, everything is taken away, just like when you are suspended. But in this instance, your salary is cut. And if you are convicted in the court, then you are dismissed from the service. In relation to the other aspect that you spoke about, that if someone is even charged departmentally, right, and the person is convicted and the commissioner of police sees it fit where he can in fact dismiss that person. However, it is not a simple task, because there are work that the supervisors, the immediate supervisors of that individual are supposed to be doing. And it impacts directly on our performance management system within the police service. And if that is followed rigidly, what will happen that when it reaches that point, then the commissioner can in fact dismiss that person and stand the scrutiny of the court, because in most instances, the persons will take the matter, they will take an attorney. So we need to lay that foundation. So if we are seeing an officer, right, who is errant, officer who is going in a particular direction, there are certain things that we are required to do as supervisors. And then you can reach the point that the commissioner of police now can say, look, I will now, in the public interest, I'm now removing you. The police service regulations, right, is clear on it. When you go in the police service regulations, section 32(1) of the police service regulations, and that is also supported in the police service regulations. When you look at...
Commissioner Jacob, I'll take your word for it. I just want to move on because my time is limited. Of those 429 persons under investigation, 76, as I identified, have been sent to the courts, which amounts to 17.7%, which is just under 1/5. How many of those have been dismissed, if you think it met the threshold?
Dismissed at what point? At the tribunal or at the courts?
Under the discretion of the commissioner of police, who may have felt that while they may not have been convicted, you think the matter brings the police service into disrepute enough to exercise your jurisdiction in that regard?
To my knowledge, none. I could remember in the past that under the Commissioner Williams, there were 2 persons, and attempts were made, but it was not successful. And since after that, there have been no other attempt to dismiss officers through that means.
2 quick questions. Are you concerned that this almost 18% may be an indication of the level of corruption if 429 in 4 years, just under 20% have been sent to the courts? It's either one of 2 things. Either your system is working very well, or your system is an indication that we have real problems with unprofessional conduct or criminal conduct in the TTPS.
Well, we have a level of indiscipline within the Trinidad and Tobago police service, and in some instances, criminality, yes. And that is the reason why I think I had mentioned to my colleagues in the Professional Standards Bureau that I intend to look at it again and establish a professional standards division within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, which consists of the professional standards unit and the complaints division. Right now, they are separate, and that is causing a lot of delay in the system. When something don't reach the threshold for criminal matters and then they go to the complaints division, the whole investigation starts over or vice versa. And as a result of that, officers who on the other side are happy with that because the matter stays so long in order to complete. And then we have a court matter, we call it the Sheldon David matter, where that if matters are not finished before a tribunal within a particular time, you can no longer bring that person before the tribunal. And that is being utilized because of how the system is. So we are now going to tighten up that system. So officers will be aware that the chances of being convicted and the matters finishing in a short space of time will be improved when this professional standards division is formed within the next few weeks.
Well, finally, you mentioned earlier on a new phenomenon. I don't think it's new. Street gangs working with white-collar criminals with resources to perpetrate levels of crimes which are probably manifesting themselves in the streets for the, is it 60 murders already for the year, if I'm not mistaken? Am I wrong?
Yes, please.
60 murders for the year already, which is, I think, twice the amount for the corresponding period last year. Street gangs working with white-collar criminals. You said the introduction of international incursion, I'm presuming of criminal intent, international players, and also the identification of new, gangs. And you mentioned, it was reported in the media a while ago that, gangs have divisions that take on jobs for hits and stuff. Acting Commissioner, will you say, because I read several international journals that indicated during the pandemic, because countries were grappling with clinical management of the pandemic, in many cases, some jurisdictions and the police service in Trinidad and Tobago was charged with extra responsibility of managing lockdowns and managing restrictions, that the porous border situation enabled, and we already had an illegal gun importation issue and an illegal drug importation issue, an exasperation of that kind of situation that we're seeing now after 2 years of a pandemic in Trinidad and Tobago. Do you think the evidence points to the fact that we have had, I don't want to say an explosion, but an intensification of illegal guns and drugs coming into the country because of the resources of the police service being stretched during that time?
Yes, but I feel that the first comment that you have made in relation to my input is even greater, because the pandemic in itself give an opportunity for the persons who are involved in criminal activities. They sat, they plan, they organize, they link. Yes, the police, I wouldn't say was distracted because we have to deal with the pandemic. But what is happening as we tighten up things in different areas, and you will find that the question of the opportunity crime issue has reduced tremendously. The organized crime took a footing in relation to those persons linking with each other. In fact, when I talk about hits, I'm talking about persons who are in the higher echelons in the society, who in fact hire persons on the street to do work on their behalf, and that is where the link comes in immediately.
Commissioner, what does that mean, persons in high echelons in society, link with criminal gangs to call it? What does that mean?
Well, I will put it like this. Our anti-gang legislation, as we look in some persons' eyes, it only pertains to the street gangs. But our anti-gang legislation also relates to anyone at any level of the society who comes together to be involved in criminal activity. And that is why we are pushing our anti-gang procedure and our unit that deal with it to look even at persons who we allege to be in white-collared crime.
Are you saying that the anti-gang legislation is not as effective as initially thought when passed? Or just a quick question, Chairman, or is it that the police service has not been able to execute as effectively?
Both ways, we have not been able to execute effectively in relation to the legislation as required, and we are doing training and development. We have linked with our international partners to assist us in that regard. But as I said, it's both ways in relation to some changes that took place within the society and how persons look at it. But we are looking at the anti-gang legislation both ways, both for the street operations and also at the higher level. And that is the reason why our financial investigative unit, our ACIB, everything is actually linking with our anti-gang unit. Because when now we are looking at investigations, we will not be only looking at the street persons, we are looking at also persons who we allege is involved in white-collared crime.
Chairman, I apologize. My media practice just kicked in there. I apologize. I defer to my colleague.
Member Richards, we apply the same policy across the board. I do say, however, that we will be coming back. So everyone, if there's a burning issue, Member Munilal, I remember you had a question to ask. It does not escape my attention. To Member Kennedy Richards.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I will be very brief. First, let me just say to the Commissioner, he seems very confident, and that in itself put some hope in the people of this country. But what I want to find out is what is the greatest challenge that you have within the police service at this present time, and what steps are you going to take to address those challenges?
Well, I will put aside the pandemic and COVID-19, so dealing within the police service itself.
Yeah.
One of our main issue in the police service, what I call the biggest issue, is implementation of different guidelines that came out from our audit report. You see the administration and how the administration is structured within the police service, right? Our human resource is the flesh on the bones for all the various initiatives that we are having outside there and what persons will see. But if that engine room is not working effectively, we will have significant issues with the officers on the ground. I'm talking about our financial management and our administrative management. So a lot of focus now is in that area. The manpower audit report had identified made several recommendations, and now we have a team from the Human Resource Department now implementing a lot of these measures. And that will play out in the manner in how things are done, the manner in how we acquire equipment from our IT department to all the other departments. That right now is the burning issue in order to get the police service really turning. And then you will see the positive outcome on the outside there. We are trying to let the persons within our administration and human resource know that they are also crime fighters. We have public servants here, we have contract workers, and we have a mixture with police officers. They must understand that they are the key to our crime fighting initiative to make Trinidad and Tobago safe. And if they are feeling that they are just doing a public servant's job and they are not really quasi-police officers indirectly to ensure that all the persons are safe, we have problems. And that is where my main focus is in order to get positive outcomes in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
All right, so thank you very much. Just a quick follow-up on that. So basically what I'm hearing is that you have the adequate staff and to carry out your function as the police service. That is adequate. Staffing is adequate.
Well, in relation, but it's not just, yes, we have staffing, but making sure you place the right people in the right places, you acquire the right equipment, you know, your resource, the right divisions, the distribution and deployment of your staff, vehicles, all that is required. That management issues I'm talking about, not in relation to persons only, but in relation to equipment, everything, what sort of equipment is purchased, all of that is crucial, right, to the police service going forward in a positive way.
Okay, great. So you spoke about the preventative maintenance program. So that will treat with your vehicles that are functioning now and keep it up to scratch and keep them within the fleet. What about those that are not functioning because it doesn't have a battery or it needs a tire or a bumper is just bent? What is taking place with that type of vehicles to get it back?
Well, within the last 2 months, I may have probably about 1 meetings with WEMCUT in relation to the way forward. And you'll notice on the papers that we advertise for garages and other things, which will be certified now by WEMCUT in relation to when they're dealing with police vehicles. So things are going to be organized differently because that is crucial for us. So WEMCUT will be assisting the police in their management maintenance management of the vehicles, even though we have a standing order 49 in relation to responsibilities for the officers, but we need that professional input in relation to the way forward. And we now develop that MOU and relationship with VEMCOT, to assist us in that regard.
Okay, thanks. I just one last thing, Mr. Chairman. This is more for observation. We live in an era now where social media everything is brought to light via social media platforms, and a couple of things dawned upon me while this meeting started, and the first thing was the gentleman who was murdered in front of his daughter in Superior, and about 2 minutes later, the police vehicle. Probably wasn't even 2 minutes, probably was 30 seconds later, on the same camera, they saw a police vehicle pass by. And then a couple of weeks ago, on the SS Erin Beach, I think it was Gentle Dates, I think his name was, he was sitting in his van, he sells fish, and he was also murdered in broad daylight. So we see where the criminals are coming out though, daytime, 10:30 in the morning, 11:30 in the morning, and very, very brazen. I know that having this discussion today, I know that you will put things in place to treat with that. But one thing we always remember is perception is greater than reality. And to get into that beach, you're passing the police station. To get out of that beach, that one way to pass the police station. I just want to let you know that some of these places where these things happen, the police is right there, strategically placed. So that is something that we need to work on in terms of our detection and in terms of our response. Because if we have the equipment and we have the staffing, then something is just not functioning. So that's just all, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Yeah, all right, thanks so much. I just want to say, the incidents with social media, sometimes you get the positive and you get the negative. And I'll just give a simple example. Yesterday on Charlotte Street, there was some report of larceny or robbery. And then the person they was flagging down a police vehicle, and the vehicle didn't respond. But that police vehicle and other police vehicles were alerted, and they actually had information where the persons were. So when the person was flagging, they were trying to pursue to reach a point to arrest the persons. But what was shown on the social media is someone flagging down a police vehicle and the police vehicle not stopping. So I'm just saying that is some of the negative feedback you can get, but at times it is very advantageous to us with the footage. So it's something that we need to live with, but it's our responsibility when those things happen from our corporate communication to do the work that is necessary to remove some of those negative perceptions.
I agree with you. Before perception is greater than reality. So it may not be not working, but it just is shown that way.
Yeah, okay, thanks.
Member De Freitas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good afternoon, everyone again. So I've been listening intently to all the questions asked and the answers given. And I'm happy to hear, because there was one thing that I wanted to ask in relation to the manpower audit report that was done. And you did indicate that you've looked at it and you're implementing some of the recommendations. I just want to follow up on some questions that Senator Richards asked, where you indicated that you're aware of, a high level of people in society funding gangs in Trinidad and Tobago, and that the anti-gang legislation sort of speaks to people on the ground, and that you sort of want to, wrap up and capture everything in one, which is the funding for the gangs as well as the individuals that, perpetuate gang violence and whatnot. I'm also happy to hear when you stated that a lot of the administrative and restructuring of the TTPS by way of implementing divisions and whatnot is coming in stream. So my question really is, in your mind, how key is the pieces of legislation that is passing through Parliament now? How key is that towards the effective operationality of crime reduction for the TTPS? So pieces of legislation that would have come in the past few years, for example, explaining wealth. There was the whistleblower, which is the most recent one. We had the anti-gang we spoke about. And inside of all of those things, you have had witness anonymity coming to the fore. How important is it now to the TTPS that these pieces of legislation are passed to help the TTPS in terms of its fight to reduce crime. Sorry.
Well, the question that you asked there, I feel to dance in the context of the value of it to us and, our persons in the Financial Investigative Bureau, how happy they are, because Senior Superintendent Lucas will tell you how many production orders that we got already and the amount of matters that we have before the court in relation to what we deal with in some instances with the suspicious transactions and how it provides that avenue for us and how we are looking forward to deal with some persons in relation to where property and other things can now be seized, because before we did not have that sort of facility. Now the law provides that. Yes, it will take a while within the court system because, you're dealing with persons and their properties and all of that. But it's very, very helpful for us. And even though we have the opinion that the anti-gang legislation is a bit weaker than how it was previously, we intend to maximize what is existing there. It is very helpful us. You'll see within the last few months, persons who are actually charged with human trafficking as gang leaders, associated with a gang, being a gang member, and all of that. And that is where I'm talking about the combination of persons who are at a certain level and who are linking with the street persons, because the street persons do the groundwork, but they do the work. So we are aiming at that high threshold, and we are also using the gang legislation to our advantage. So there's a lot of legislation in relation to the aspects of with statements and so forth, and those things are crucial. It gives a certain amount of confidence to our witnesses, also persons who are willing to come forward in order to give the police information and to give statements and things. It will help us tremendously. In some instances.
So I was just going to say, because you see, that's important, because there's a sentiment that singular pieces of legislation could make a massive dent in crime, when in actuality it is all the pieces working together. So you just mentioned witnesses being able to come forward. So the whistleblower legislation being a key piece, as well as that legislation that spoke to witness anonymity orders, again, which would have been a key piece in relation to the TTPS being able to get the kind of evidence they need to, one, get to the white-collar criminals as well as the individuals lower down on the ground by way of the gangs. So that's why I was asking that question. And you sort of corroborated that in the sense that it helps the TTPS greatly, and the fact that we need to get these pieces of legislation passed so that we can get on with the business of reducing crime in this country effectively and consistently.
Yeah. But I just want to, with your question, Chair, if you permit, I just want my main Senior Superintendent Francis to respond to some of the issues you mentioned, because he's our key legal person within our Special Investigative Unit, and he now can just make a little contribution concerning what you are asking, Mr. Francis.
Senior Superintendent Francis, respond, be crisp with the response, but go ahead.
Yes, thank you very much. And this is just to add to what the Commissioner Jacob indicated, and also Member De Freitas. The packages and suites of legislation work in hand. So, for example, under the Anti-Gang Act, we have the main gang offenses that we charge for. We marry these now with the civil asset recovery regime that was put in place, where we can, if we do not satisfy the threshold for a criminal charge being preferred against an individual, we can still go after the individual under the civil realm, under two streams, under civil asset recovery as well as unexplained wealth orders. The other provision we have is under the Proceeds of Crime Act, which also gives us the ability to get the confiscation orders as well as get forfeiture orders made in respect of proceeds of crime. In addition to the Anti-Gang Act itself, given that this legislation requires a careful building of the evidence and witnesses who are readily willing to come forward to give evidence against the gangs are very far and few in between, the legislation that speaks to protection of witnesses comes into play, as well as amendments to the Evidence Act, which make admissible video recordings of witness statements being admitted into court. So the entire suite of legislation that comes forward adds and complements the work that the TTPS is in fact doing. And as rightly indicated by Member De Freitas, no one piece of legislation can be used on its own. The others have to complement it. Thank you very much.
Member De Freitas.
Mr. Chair, you can go ahead. I'm good.
Can I raise a matter?
Certainly, Member Munilal.
Yeah. I just wanted to respond to, I think, is the Officer Francis a few minutes ago. Officer, look, the national community is watching what we are doing, what we are saying. We give these views that we have a suite of legislation and we have a lot of laws.
Munilal, you know the long run up. Remember, Munilal, raise the issue.
But given the fact of crime, the data, what is wrong? If we have all this legislation in place, what really is wrong? Why is this society now with such intense criminal activity and we have all this legislation in place and everything? If you listen to Mr. Francis there, you should feel good.
Member Munilal, raise the question.
Okay, my question to the Commissioner is this.
Thank you.
Is that we have picked up a new, to me, a relatively new area of focus today in your discourse, which is this connection between upper echelons of society and street gang activity and the linking, the sort of unification of crime at two levels. Do you believe that specific amendments to the anti-gang legislation in particular would help with that problem that you identified, Mr. Commissioner? I think Mr. Chairman would like that question.
The Commissioner, you have a discreet and direct question without, it's a crisp question. Let us have a direct answer.
He will get a direct answer from my senior superintendent, Mr. Francis.
By way of an example, to complement what Commissioner Jacob indicated, we have identified from our intelligence work that we have persons who are involved in illegal quarrying. These individuals themselves are not involved in violent crime, but illegal quarrying itself does generate a high level of criminal proceeds, which can fall within the realm of white-collar crime because there's an evasion of taxes that are due to the state, as well as the illegal mining on state property. We have identified that the criminal gangs now are linking with these individuals who are running these illegal quarrying operations with a view of commingling their proceeds that they gain from their own individual criminal activity, the violent gang, as well as the individuals who are involved in the illegal quarrying. The illegal quarriers are also using these criminal gangs as leverage to extort money, as well as to act as persons who protect them in the areas where they're committing these illegal quarrying. So that is just an example that ties into what Commissioner Jacob indicated.
I want to reroute Member Munilal's question to you. Do you think that amendments, having identified now that the issue of gang is no longer at a certain level, but it permeates the upper echelons of society?
No, I will answer.
Hold on. Do you think that amendments, because you have Member Munilal now, this is all being recorded, asking you a question, because you said that you do not think that the anti-gang legislation has enough teeth in its new form. Do you think that amendments will assist in handling and dealing and meeting with this development that you have just told us you have noticed?
To answer you, member, yes. Specifically in the area of the tax offenses, fraud offenses, because those are prevalent with these types of crimes.
Okay. I want now to piggyback on that, and I'm asking a discrete question. I want you to focus on my question. Both Member De Freitas, Member Richards, and in fact, Member Munilal have alluded to certain legislation that is in the parliament. Some have been passed and some is now on debate. I'm now speaking about the topical one, the contemporaneous legislation, the whistleblower legislation. Do you think that the introduction of the whistleblower legislation in its current form can assist the police service in improving its performance and thereby increase public confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, if it is passed?
Mr. Chairman, please hold up. I really want to raise a matter now. I think it is unfair to ask the leadership of the police service to make critical comments in public on government policy that is before the parliament. I think this is not the police service. They are members of the police. They are officers of the state. They are senior public officers, and they ought not to be invited to make critical comments on government policy that is before the parliament.
Commissioner.
Sorry, Mr. Chair, but that has been done for as long as I've been on this Joint Select Committee of National Security.
The members cannot be
let us not, people, let me go back to fundamentals. The purpose of this inquiry is to inquire into the safety and security of citizens and public concerns about the performance of the police service. Commissioner, you can answer me yes or you can answer me no. You are the Commissioner of Police. You head the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I ask you, do you think that the whistleblower legislation in its current form can be a method of assisting the service in strengthening and improving its performance and thereby increase the confidence of the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service? I'm not asking you to comment on policy. I'm asking you to say if you think that
you're asking the commissioner to say that he agrees with government policy in the public or he disagrees.
Good. I am asking you, and I ask Member Munilal, the question is now posed to the commissioner. Commissioner, could you answer, please?
Yes, definitely. Because the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, over the years in doing policing, we depend on informants. We say, if you see something, say something. That principle, the whistleblower aspect, is a principle that exists within law enforcement, and it will help tremendously. And in the context of passing that information and how it is designed, it will be very, very helpful. And if you look at other jurisdictions where it exists, you can, in fact, do the research and see the benefit that it will be, just adding again to the other set of legislation that we have put together, right, in order to deal with our situation, crime situation in Trinidad and Tobago.
Thank you very much, Commissioner. Commissioner, may I remind you that if a question crosses the Rubicon and you are uncomfortable or not able to answer it, you're entitled to tell any member, including the chair, that, and we shall respect your views. I go now to a point raised by Member Richards. I didn't want to interrupt him as it relates to the dismissal at pleasure at the discretion of the commissioner. I know that all members here, well, some members, I hope you, have read the case of Endel Thomas and the Queen. You know, Endel Thomas was a police officer in Tobago in the 19 with the riots, and he refused to charge certain rioters and he was dismissed. And you know that the Privy Council held that dismissal at pleasure is no longer available where you have a service commission. Are you aware of that, sir?
Yes, I'm quite aware. Quite aware of that matter.
My next question to you relates to, again, public confidence. In your submission to this committee, you indicated that the commissioner's powers are or is constrained as a result of the conflict between the constitutional authority given to the commissioner and the Public Service Regulations and Public Service Commission. What, in your opinion, having indicated that, what, in your opinion, needs to be done or what can be done to resolve this conflict and thereby give the police service some more teeth to instill public confidence?
Well, I had mentioned it a bit earlier when I talk about the whole human resource aspect, where we will have a host of public servants within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service who follow the public service regulations. And if you check in other police departments, the persons who work under contract that is given by the Commissioner of Police, who will have that overall authority in relation to the managing of those persons, right, pertaining to all the aspects of the contract. So within the contract, it will have all the pros and cons and the limits that exist. But when you are running the police service at this point, and you have persons who have to adhere to the public service regulations, and when things are happening, it tends to affect, because in fact, the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is a 24 hours service. It is not like a normal public servant piece of work where you will have persons working 8 to 4 Monday to Friday. Therefore, the whole aspect, and I will give a simple example. We had data entry persons working within our Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, and they work shift for a period of time. But now they changed it and they introduced something called BOAs. And with those BOAs, now they work from Monday to Friday. But we need data entry 24/7. So again, I'm mentioning some of the issues that we are having that affect us. And I believe that if the Commissioner of Police can have that measure of authority in relation to the human resource and it is done in that particular way, it will be able to manage the police service more effectively.
The chair is still muted, Chair.
Mr. Chair, I think your mic is muted.
Sorry, Mr. Commissioner, you yourself have experienced a transitional period to now being acting commissioner. Do you think that this transition has in any way undermined or has it augmented confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service?
It's a sort of challenging question.
Yes, it is.
But because myself and members of the executive, we look at things in a positive way, and we work on anything that happens, we look to build on it. What it have done, it have built the camaraderie among the executive members and the senior officers to come together in the team approach in order to be dealing with the police service in a particular way. The kind of support that I am getting from both the lower level, the middle managers, and the executive is amazing to see what is happening from what we may say some negative fallout. So again, yes, it had from the past, it had a sort of effect, but there are positivity coming out of what occurred, and we are maximizing on that positivity.
I want to ask a final question before I open the floor for one question per members. Communication seems to be a very important aspect, an important tool of instilling public confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service. I am not speaking about what passes for the shows that we look on television in the early evening. I'm talking about communicating what the police service is about. What plans do you have to promote communication, meaningful communication from the police service to the public that will instill or improve the confidence that the public has in the police service?
In the first aspect, I had given our main professional within the police service, ACP Archie, who in fact is a professional and an expert in that area, to oversee the running of that corporate communication. We have now reactivated our ambassadors. We have trained ambassadors for the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service who go out there and appear on radio programs and on television programs. We have now developed a link with all the television stations in order that we can appear on different programs. What we are sending persons who are trained within the media. Our corporate communication is still standing there, and we work hand in hand with all the news network. But we have the other aspect to deal with, the other news network, like the social media network, which is so overwhelming and where most of the negativity is actually put. So we end up now in a sort of game within the police service that we have to constantly be doing our work and counteracting a lot of untruth and other things within the social media that takes a lot of time and energy from our corporate communication. So again, we are putting things in place, and we have the leadership there in order to highlight what we are doing within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Commissioner, it's a note to self and a note to you also. The social media is here to stay, and I think that you maybe need to focus and step up. Member Munilal, I'm giving you have the floor. I'm going to come around again to pose if there's a burning question you wish to pose to the Commissioner.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Commissioner. As we come to an end, I gather, on this matter, could you give some reassurance to the public out there that in the coming hours in this country, we will have some type of, frontal and attack on the criminal elements by way of a higher level of security, of policing, of patrols, and certainly in specific areas that, you all are aware of, that are high targets and so on, business areas and so on, that we will see a heightened sense of patrols to give that security before there's a fatal shooting and that type of thing. Because I can tell you that from my own personal experience, just being on the roads and the roadway and highway and so on, I have not seen in certain areas the type of patrolling that I would have seen prior to that. But having said that, my question really is if you can give us some confidence now.
Well, Munira, let me ask, we haven't heard from Deputy Commissioner of Police Intelligence and Investigation, Mr. Wendell Williams. Member Munilal, if the Commissioner permits, would you allow the Acting Deputy Commissioner to answer it, or do you insist that it comes from the Commissioner? Member? Go ahead, Mr. Williams, if you can answer the question. Once the Commissioner permits you, of course.
Chair and members, like every citizen, we are aware of the present situation that...
We are not hearing clearly, sir.
Member Williams, you need to speak up and you need to focus on the question asked and go into the answer, please.
This thing is dead.
Yeah, well, I will go ahead. We are happy to get the opportunity again to reinforce to the general public that the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service is very proactive and prevention is our main key. Mr. Williams, as you refer to, they deal with the investigations and looking at detecting. But I mentioned of our establishment of our operational centers in each police division. That is the key. I talk about the aspect of our highway patrol now moving from just dealing with DUI and speed to be a main key crime fighting mechanism within the arsenal of the police. And you'll see just yesterday we had two incidents where the highway patrol did that good work and recover firearms and other things. So our operational centers that direct the patrols and monitor the patrols is a key form. And I talk about the maintenance policy, the patrol policy, to ensure that we have that high presence and create the omnipresence that is necessary. As we receive additional vehicles that we are getting within the next few days or weeks, you all will see definitely a greater presence of police officers on the road, and we intend to utilize our motorcycles that normally just prevail mainly on the highways and things to be in what we call in the inner cities, meaning to say small communities will in fact be seeing motorcyclists. So again, we have that patrol policy, that deployment policy, and the key behind it is to create what our member Munilal is trying to identify, that we will be very proactive as it relates to the crime prevention issues.
Mr. Chair, you turned off your mic again, but I'm assuming you called upon me.
Yes, and Member Kennedy, I will come to you after. Sorry for not following the guide. Member De Freitas.
Yes, I don't think Member Richards is in here. Member Kennedy Richards, I'm not seeing.
Just me go directly to you. I know.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. So we've been talking about the expectation of citizens in relation to what they expect of the TTPS in relation to crime fighting. I want to turn our attention a bit to the actual officers themselves and ask the question, in your opinion, as the leadership of the TTPS, where do you think the morale of the TTPS officers are right now? And what have you all put in place to ensure that the morale of the TTPS officers are of such a standard that they are up to the challenge in terms of crime fighting?
Well, you know that we recognize that within the pandemic, the sort of challenges for our officers. And that is the reason why during the Christmas period, we brought out persons who volunteered to come off vacation leave to assist us. We also now are providing additional rewards for officers, who perform well. But in addition to that, you'll know that we promote officers, and we are also going to start the promotion process for our officers in the 2nd division, our corporals and our sergeants. That will be starting in the next. Those things help in order to raise that sense of motivation for the officers. There are several things that we are doing. We are now developing our employees assistance program for our officers. But we are not just focusing on our officers, because we also have officers who have retired and are going through a certain amount of situations in relation to getting the gratuity and pension. And we have a team also working on that. We are ensuring that the officers now, where they are slowness in getting the increment. After you work for a number of years, you have increments to get to enhance your salary. So I can just say the numerous things that we are concentrating on to ensure that our officers are in fact motivated, and we are now trying to ensure that we get the necessary tools for them to operate with through our police stores to get all the necessary equipment and things. We are concentrating on those things that people call small things, but mean so much for the police officers who are within the various stations and who are out there on the beat. We are also going through our planning section in the sense that we are saying that some of our projects that we had that may have been taking a lot from us, we need to hold back on it and look at how we can divert some of money to deal with the stations themselves where police officers are operating in and working in poor working conditions, right? In relation to, we just got 14 AFIS machines to assist police officers. So no longer they will have to be constantly taking the prints by the ink and all of that, so that we can go in that technological way to assist the officers. So we are taking into account our officers. And finally, we have joined a positive alliance with the Police Association, Welfare Association, in relation to doing different things to help the officers. In fact, the Police Association had granted some awards to the various divisions. So the effort, I think, is 307,000 they had put out and think to assist that the officers and them could have different among themselves, right, over the Christmas period. And we sort of followed through with that. So there are a lot of things that we are doing in order to try to motivate our officers, but the main thing that concerns officers a lot is promotion, their increments, and their place of work been making it comfortable for them.
Thank you. I want to following up on that. I heard that you are working closely with the police, the divisional and the representative of the police service. What about community policing? Don't you think that an increased focus on community policing involving the community will go a long way in building public confidence in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service? And under your watch, will there be an emphasis on community policing?
Well, when we talk about being proactive and we talk about prevention is better than cure, definitely community policing is the key. You'll realize just recently we joined and we went to the we call it VUM. Right.
Commissioner?
Yes, please, sorry about that. The Vision and Mission, recently we joined an alliance with Vision and Mission to do work together with them. Recently, we again, through our police youth club, we started an operation in the St. Joseph old police station where we start conflict resolution through by linking with a particular company that joined with us, and also the attorneys who came and joined us in relation to go into the various divisions to bring persons abreast of minor issues that may result in altercation, and in some instances we get in serious offenses and sometimes murders, So we maintain our police youth clubs throughout Trinidad and Tobago, and we look at that aspect of community policing as important. But we look at community policing mainly as a philosophy because we want our patrol officers and others to also be community officers. And with the new trust, when we organize our patrol zones and patrol beats, the officers, when they are patrolling the zones and the beats, they will need to be interacting with the business community, the residents and things in different areas to bring that true aspect of community policing that is required in Trinidad and Tobago. If we just focus on just the persons who we call community police officers, will not be sufficient. We want our patrol officers, we want our investigators, the manner how they do the investigation, the manner how they do follow-up, everything as a part of that whole community policing trust.
Commissioner, thank you. The last question I have for you, it's linked. The policeman power audit report, you have stated that you've taken, the TTPS has taken a renewed focus on the implementation of key recommendations. As part of that, based on what has happened recently, has there been any engaging in the act of succession planning for the police service? So whenever one commissioner goes and another one comes, we have a smooth transition, which will always keep the confidence of the public intact once that is so. Have you engaged in succession planning?
We actually look at the whole aspect of the succession planning. I linked with the Ministry of National Security, and we are looking at all our persons within the middle management and others in order to do the training and development of the officers so that we can have that sort of succession planning that is required so that persons can easily take over leadership without any issues. Yes, in the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service, we have a host of qualified persons, from a host of attorneys to other persons with degrees, master's degrees, but what we don't have is causing that to mesh that aspect with policing itself and police management. So we recognize where we have the problem, and the training and thing that will be coming with support from the Ministry of National Security is to take a host of officers, we're looking at their age and other things, to train them and develop them so that in time to come, they will be able to take over without any issues. So we are looking at it carefully, and we are also accelerating a recruitment process within the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service.
Thank you. Commissioner, I invite you now to give us a brief closing remarks before we thank you for your participation.
Again, I'll use this opportunity to give the assurance to the citizenry of Trinidad and Tobago that the police service is here to serve. Servant leadership is the key, and that is our mantra. And we know in order to do that, we must link with our stakeholders. And you, the population of Trinidad and Tobago, are in fact our stakeholders. We have a good relationship with the various corporations. We have a good relationship with the various business groups who are supporting us in full. Our intentions is to make our first step is to make crime prevention the key, meaning to say being very proactive. But we know as a fact that in spite of how we can have a lot of police presence out there to prevent crimes from happening, when we are dealing with organized crime and the level of criminal incursion in Trinidad and Tobago, we will continue having persons who will plan, organize, and commit crime. Thus, the other aspect of our policing is very, very important, and that is in relation to our detection and our investigation area that the ACP Williams and his team is dealing with. And as you're all aware, that we have now reached the point that we have persons who are trained as ballistics officers who work within the Forensic Science Center. You're all aware that we have set up our one-stop shop to speed up matters at our Special Evidence Recovery Unit. And now we have the DNA operating at our Forensic Science Center. So that scientific aspect will help. In addition to that, we have our technological aspect from our cyber persons to our research and analytical unit and working together with our white-collared crime personnel. And we have a team approach now to investigation. So when an incident occurs, what you will find is that depending on the nature of it, we get a team together representing the various areas and that have been giving us great success. We know that as we go along, we will get the relevant support from the other aspect of the criminal justice system, and that is the court per se. And I am aware that the Attorney General and team is working in a particular way that matters can be sped up before the court and we can get the outcomes, because swift outcomes of matters means a lot to the Trinidad and Tobago Police Service in our deterrent approach to crime fighting. So again, thank you very much.
Commissioner, on behalf of this committee, we want to thank you. We want to thank, on behalf of the people, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, we want to thank you and your team, the Acting Deputy Commissioner of Police, Wendell Williams, and Acting Senior Superintendent, Kerwin Francis. Thank you for your attendance. Members of this committee, I want to thank you all personally for your commitment, for taking and giving of your time to Trinidad and Tobago for such an important inquiry. And I want to thank you all for your participation. It is now 10 minutes after 5, 8 minutes after 5, and I would like with you, if there are no objections, that we adjourn this meeting as we are here publicly, and we will send out dates for our next meeting. Are there any objections, Member Munilal, to that course of action?
Thank you very much, and thank you to the team of the Commissioner and the other gentlemen.
Objections to that, Mr. Nigel De Freitas, the Member De Freitas?
No objections, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, and thank you to the team again as well.
Commissioner, if there are any questions from any of our members, they will submit it to the Secretariat, and the Secretariat will submit it to you in writing, and you will reply in kind. That is understood and accepted?
Yes, please.
All right, everyone be safe. And the meeting is now adjourned to a date to be set.
Yeah.
Thank you kindly.
Yeah, good afternoon to all.
Good afternoon.
Recording.